In 1986, the Supreme Court had upheld Georgia's anti-sodomy law in Bowers v. Hardwick. The Bowers Court framed the issue as a question of whether homosexuals had a fundamental constitutional right to engage in sodomy. The court held unequivocally that they did not. Ever since, gay rights activists had been looking to challenge that precedent, and that chance arrived in 2003 in Lawrence v. Texas. In response to a weapons disturbance call, police officers entered John Lawrence's home. Officers claimed to have observed Lawrence engaged in anal sex with Tyrone Garner. The men were arrested and charged under the Texas anti-sodomy law, which prohibited oral or anal sex between two members of the same sex. Lawrence and Garner were convicted and fined $200. Lawrence appealed, and a divided Court of Appeals for the Texas 14th Division, sitting en banc, affirmed the conviction based on the precedent set in Bowers v. Hardwick. Lawrence's petition to the Supreme Court for certiorari was granted. Writing for the majority, Justice Kennedy set aside the conviction, invalidated the Texas law, and overturned Bowers v. Hardwick. Kennedy asserted that the foundation of Bowers had been eroded by subsequent Supreme Court rulings, recognizing the constitutional protection for personal autonomy in marriage, procreation, family relationships, and expressly rejecting class-based legislation excluding homosexuals from protection of state anti-discrimination laws. Unlike the Georgia statute in Bowers, which criminalized sodomy between all couples, the Texas statute in the Lawrence case criminalized sodomy only between homosexuals. Nevertheless, the court declined to analyze the issue on equal protection grounds, because that might mean that wording the statute differently to include homosexual and heterosexual couples would solve the problem. Instead, the court concluded that the liberty guaranteed by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment extended to the intimate acts of consenting adults committed in private, including homosexual acts, and that Texas had no legitimate interest that warranted infringing that right. Justice O'Connor concurred with the majority that the Texas statute should be struck down, but she would not have overturned Bowers. O'Connor argued Texas's law violated the Equal Protection Clause because the sex acts were criminalized only when performed by same-sex couples. O'Connor argued that the law served no legitimate purpose other than a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group. Had the statute applied to both heterosexual and homosexual couples, the Texas law might have passed constitutional muster. Justice Scalia dissented, arguing that under the principle of stare decisis, the court should follow Bowers and uphold the Texas law. Scalia took issue with the majority's consideration of public opinion and foreign laws. Scalia further argued that the court's ruling would have far-reaching effects in muddying the waters of rational basis review, impeding states' ability to regulate morality, and paving the way for a constitutional right to homosexual marriage. Justice Thomas dissented to say that the law was uncommonly silly and should be repealed, but was entirely constitutional, since there's no general right to privacy or, quote, liberty of the person in spatial and more transcendent dimensions, unquote. Lawrence v. Texas is a landmark civil rights case which recognized the sea change in American attitudes toward homosexuality. Justice Powell's statement around the time of the Bowers decision that he had never met a homosexual stands in stark contrast to the tone of Justice Kennedy's opinion in the Lawrence case, where the court recognized that homosexual relationships are anchored by the same elements as heterosexual ones, stating, quote, when sexuality finds overt expression in intimate conduct, the conduct can be but one element in a bond that is more enduring, unquote. If you found this video helpful, you can explore all of our content by visiting us at quimby.com. If you have a question or comment about this case, please post it in the comments area below, and we'll do our best to get back to you. If you think we did a good job with this video, please like, share, and favorite it. And if you think this video might be helpful to people you know, please share on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+ as well, to get this video out there. If you haven't done so already and you enjoy watching videos on this channel, click on the red subscribe button just below this video so you can get all the latest updates.